Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. If you want to keep up to date with all things Clown Decade, do subscribe to the channel and of course become a channel member. And today, it's a Friday, it's a classic, Politics Joe Vox Pop. Obviously this week we had the Tory conference, and Politics Joe decided to do one thing I can actually get on board with, which is rub the total and utter destruction of the Tory party in their face. Hence, I have a lovely picture of a graveyard with a tree in it. It's not an oak, but it'll do. You know how these Vox Pops go. Let's just get into it and laugh at some Tories who are holding out some hope.
A lot of people make it sound like, people are despondent. I don't think they are. I think that the vibe is more there's an unwillingness to accept reality.
That's certainly how it feels sometimes, though. I don't understand how you go through so many election losses. I mean, hell, there were even a couple of by-elections just yesterday where Tories lost votes in absolutely all of them. And it is just a case that a lot of talk about the Tory party is they're just not going to be a national force anymore. They had some seats in Wales, they're projected to all go. They had some seats up in Scotland, they're all gone. I mean, one or two, it wasn't many. Red Wall seats they had obviously in 2019, well they went last year obviously, and they're not going to go back to Tory obviously, they're going to go to Reform. And so your last holdout are the Shire counties, but now they're being eaten into by the Lib Dems. You know, the projections for polling at the moment is basically they'll get somewhere between 30 and 70 seats. Because it's so chaotic, we don't know, but an awful lot of people seem to think it's going to be on the lower end. And that's devastating for a party that's lasted 250 years. But then again, that is about the life cycle for any empire. And the Tories were an empire.
And certainly an unwillingness to admit the problems that the Conservative Party has caused. The amount of talks I've gone to, MPs, shadow ministers, who will lay blame on Labour for doing something that we started 10 years ago. I think that's the problem that isn't being addressed. This big elephant in the room is we had 14 years, we haven't done these things.
Oh, there's plenty of Tories online and that I speak to in real life who absolutely hate the 14 years line. They absolutely despise it. And the problem is that it's going to stick around for some years. Yes, Labour have absolutely made things worse. Yes, we would be in a better state with the Tories, I fully admit that. However, we'd still be in a pretty shoddy state. Because ultimately, we were put in a shoddy state after 14 years of the Tories being in government, and you can't blame the Lib Dem coalition, you certainly can't blame the DUP coalition. We were promised a realignment with Boris Johnson, and we ended up with complete and utter continuity. Is it any wonder that people are happy that the Tory party is dying a death?
We're now complaining about things that happened on our watch, and that creates a very strange atmosphere. I mean, the whole conference really feels more like a trade show.
Yeah, I mean, Fraser Nelson brings this up all the time. When you look at pictures and all that of conference, if most people are in suits, it's more of a trade show. If people are more in kind of smart casual gear, or at the very least, if most people don't have ties on, that means the membership's turned up. And when you look at Tory conference, it's basically everyone is paid to be there. That was quite similar, by the way, with the Labour conference as well. I don't think it was as bad with them, though. I even saw articles by Tim Shipman on The Spectator that effectively said there were MPs that could buy entire rounds for people from their constituency who turned up because so few of them did. Like, I mean, something has to change soon, otherwise it's just total curtains for the Tories, and I have no idea what they can do. I was talking about this in The Other Side of the Hill, which we obviously did before Kemi's big speech, which turned everyone around, and I'm pretty sure these Vox Pops were done before Kemi's speech as well, where everyone decided to get deluded for about 20 minutes before they started looking at the polls again. And, you know, hypothetically, what could the Tories actually do that would get people's votes back, whether that be me, you, or, well, the average normie? And the answer is, I don't really know. My dad is very much still probably he's probably not going to vote at all, actually, as it stands right now. But his main complaint with reform is mainly the economic problem, to which I obviously always say, sorry, did you miss the last 14 years? Yes, they're doing a bit of bribery that costs about 5 billion. Let's not forget net zero stupidity. Let's not forget how much of public spending at the moment there is, for a start, and to how much of it is directly redistributive. It's over a third. And so having a go at reform for an extra 5 billion when they are going to be cutting an awful lot of that because any foreign national now can't access it, then really, when you think about it, no, the economics will be a lot better under reform, and there's some convincing there. It'll take time, but my dad's very much a Thatcherite type of Tory, and they are desperate to have less redistribution, and the big problem you have is that half the country don't, so you're in a bit of a catch-22. And a big reason they don't, by the way, a lot of people will probably be happy with, say, getting rid of the winter fuel allowance, if, and only if, one, it ends up being means-tested anyway, fine, whatever, and two, if you got rid of asylum hotels, if you got rid of asylum seekers, if you stopped giving money to foreigners, basically, you're in a complete trap until you do something about that. Who's the only party that looks like they're going to do anything about that? Reform.
I'm not, going to be back there and pretend everything's swimmingly fine, But well, you have people like Darren Grimes, for instance, saying literally no one's here. Like, that's just, why lie about that sort of stuff when there's video evidence? That's just not true. I mean, it could be busier, sure, but...
Yeah, it's called hyperbole. I guess welcome to rhetoric. The country isn't literally bankrupt, but hyperbolically it may as well be.
It's not like wholly dead, which if we were completely in the dirt, then I'm pretty sure we would be.
I mean, let's be real, not every MP turned up. Hell, the ex-Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, where was he? He was over in America getting a job as an advisor to Microsoft. Liz Truss, if anyone remembers her, where was she? Don't know, but though she was on the New Culture Forum the other day, who cared? No one. When the big attack line against the Tories is Liz Truss crashed the economy and your average normie doesn't even remember who she is, you're in a worse place than people hating you. It's just total apathy. They didn't even have protesters this year. In Manchester, every time they go there is a banner that hangs off a bridge saying "Hang the Tory scum." It wasn't there this year. They're in a much worse place than people hating them. People just don't care. If that's not dead as a political force, I don't know what is, especially comparatively.
Well, it's much quieter, it's true. I thought Kemi started it off really well on Sunday with a very positive message. And, we've got a lot to do, we've got a lot of challenges, but I think that as a party, we're up for the challenge. Yeah,
I don't buy this. Everyone knows the plan is effectively, they're effectively praying, as someone put it, that the meteors kill the dinosaurs. Like, Labour are obviously floundering at the moment, but Reform pretty much going strength to strength. Managing to keep up a year's worth of momentum, by the way. That's not too bad, to be honest with you. And effectively what the hope is that come 2029, okay, Reform are going to win, and they basically have to hope that they flounder and just die as a political force, which is a lot easier for Reform to do, because they're about 4 years old, if that. And I guess the Tories are hoping that they can be the right-wing force again. Well, I suppose they could, but I have my doubts that they'll be the ones coming up in a situation like that. Honestly, in a situation like that, people will lose complete faith in democracy. What do you do at that point? What's a Democratic Party's power in that place? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. It'll be chaos.
How does it feel to be a Conservative at this moment in time?
Frustrating, really. I'm a councillor at West Berkshire Council. We ran the council for 18 years, and then we were unceremoniously dumped in 23. The Liberal Democrats have taken over, and I really miss being involved in the decision-making process and working with great officers and civil servants.
Well, I can tell you, you'll probably be welcome to join Reform and try and run for them to get back into Berkshire County Council. But yeah, I can understand the frustration. I have no doubt that there are an awful lot of meetings with members and locals effectively saying, why is your party so terrible? I do know a story of when my mother once went to a meeting with councillors, and the Green councillor got quite a lot of stick from the audience because obviously the Green Party is full of absolute mad people, but people seem to mainly vote Green. But it's basically left-wing boomers that vote for them in a sense of, oh yes, I really like conservation and really want the environment to survive. It's not particularly young people with an absolute mad, loony-eyed view of the world that all oil needs to go, and there needs to be a wind farm every square metre. But this guy will be frustrated because he'll be on the receiving end of an awful lot of what the hell are your party doing for the last 10 years? Which, why wouldn't he have that? The party has been dire for 10 years. Everyone was really happy for about 2 months when Boris Johnson got in, and it was just terrible from there on.
I think we've got to. It's going to be a long haul to get back into control in councils in government, but we've got to work hard.
This is a man who just desperately wants his job back. He's probably been a Tory for decades, probably since about the age of 20, maybe even younger. And you've got to bear this in mind when talking about political parties. They are social clubs as well as they are political activist groups. He'll have had many friends in the Tory party. He probably has family in the Tory party. He could have met his wife while doing political activism for the Tory party. And so he's got great affinity to it. And so that's why you'll see an awful lot of people effectively in a state of despair. How could they do this to my social group is what they'll be thinking about the MPs. Because at the end of the day, that's all people care about. Anyone in the Tory party that is known to anyone in the public is basically the front bench MPs, and these days it's not even that. At best you'll have people knowing Robert Jenrick, and even then it's mainly younger people, and younger people hate the Tories, so what chance do you have? So I have an awful lot of sympathy, especially for the older people that are within these political parties, because really it will be their life. Younger people, though, I'm a bit more cynical on, because I think for an awful lot of them it's just a way to try and get a job. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, part of the reason I'm in Reform is hopefully to one day, get a job within it. And then one day I'll probably be one of these people within Reform. It's possible. And obviously I don't have anything against it, so that's why I feel more bad for this guy than making fun of him. The young people, though, absolutely, they deserve to be made fun of.
I'm pretty positive, actually. I think we're starting to work out my message. I think I didn't vote for Kemi, I didn't vote for Kemi or Jenrick, I refused to vote, and they weren't my ideal candidates. I supported Tom Tugendhat, then James Cleverly very briefly before he had to step back again. So
okay, gotta be honest, that's wild politics. Cleverly and Tugendhat were very much on the left wing when it came to the leadership election, and yet this guy's very positive about Kemi Badenoch's, let's face it, more right-wing position within the party and attempts to catch up with Reform effectively. I don't understand how he's managed that. We're going in the right direction of cutting stamp duty, good policy, but no normie's really going to care about that. I'm sorry, most people under 40 are never going to expect to pay stamp duty because you don't even pay it for your first home. There's not many people, I mean, just to throw it out there, my brother's almost 40 years old and only bought his first house about 4 years ago, something like that. And they're just not even looking, as far as I can tell, to move house. I mean, people forget this. Millennials are in their 40s, almost. They're old. They're the age we thought of the boomers 20 years ago. In fact, they were just boomer age 20 years ago, back when we were still complaining about them getting houses. So this whole idea of, yes, it'll help out the housing market, but let's be real, most first-time buyers it won't affect anyway, because it's exempt from first-time buyers at the moment. It's madness. And then, other big policies, we'll double apprenticeships. Apprenticeships are basically 0-hour contracts. Nobody's really going to take them up, because why would you when you can just take up a job at Tesco that pays more and takes less effort? And then on top of that, obviously, you've got leaving the ECHR. You should be horrified at that if you supported Tugendhat and Cleverly, but he isn't. This is the thing, it's a social club. He didn't really have politics, he just thought, these two seem like nice people, but Jenrick and Badenoch, they get into fights quite a lot, and I don't particularly like it. Which, there's a lot of people in a lot of political parties that are like that. I mean, at the Reform conference, there was a woman who stood up and defended trans rights in the middle of the motion voting, which, why are you in Reform? But there you go, it's crazy the reasons people join parties.
Neither of them were my preferred candidates, but I think Emi's doing a really good job because she's, as I say, she wasn't my choice, but she's looked at policy, she's spending time considering things, weighing up the options and making decisions. Now, I think that's much better than just headline policies, throwing it out there every single day. So
I mean, that's obviously a dig at Reform, but, over the past month with the crime and the two immigration policies that they threw out, they had detail. When it came to Kemi Badenoch announcing policy, so maybe this was after the stamp duty one, I'm not so sure. Well, no, maybe it was before, because that was just headline policy. Stamp duty gone. Oh, actually, look into the details of it. It's only for your primary home, so i.e. the one you live in. We presume, we're not actually sure. And as I say, what focus group or general public poll had get rid of stamp duty at the top of their list? Barely anyone, and it was the headline policy of her speech. The rest of it, no one really remembers. So, great, you've spent ages looking up policy and you ended up just copying reforms anyway, because I don't know why Reform aren't throwing it out, but it's basically Reform policy anyway. In fact, arguably Reform policy makes more sense because it's just a threshold of £750,000 house and over, you pay 2%, 1.5 million and over, it's 4%, which is way less than we have now, but everything under that, which is 80% plus of houses, has no stamp duty. Whereas if now you have to find out if you're in the legal loophole with the Tories, should they get in, lol, of is this my primary home or not? It just makes it needlessly complicated. But as I say, I don't think this guy actually knew about any of this at the time, given that Kemi hadn't announced it, so, we'll give him a bit of a berth.
I think there's a better chance for us in the future. Obviously the polls are really bad now, but they change. They go up and down year on year, month by month. So at the moment, I'm focused on what we can do internally to strengthen ourselves. And then when we start to present ourselves back to the electorate, I think we're doing a really good job at getting towards that level where we can do it in a much more cohesive and a way that I think will reach more people.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea why he thinks any of that, to be honest. Give it time, a lot can change, but let's face it, what people are really banking on in the Tories is everyone else screwing it up, which Labour already are. And that was basically their tactics for the past century. Wait for Labour to screw it up, because they did every time, and then come back and rule for 8 to 10 years. The odd time you got 17 with Margaret Thatcher and John Major. This isn't going to work this time because you have Reform, who are actually a proper challenger. People thought this is the SDP, but they died within months. Reform is here, is winning elections, and is here to stay. Next May is going to solidify that. That's going to be yet another foothold. It's kind of insane, really, to think about, but they have the perfect levelling up strategy to get to Parliament. Councils, even more councils plus devolved Parliament, mayoral elections, things like that. And then eventually you have foot soldiers in all these places, helped out with councillors that are there, you make the institutions you need there, you get people on the doorstep, knocking doors, encouraging them to vote, and then you win a general election. It's incredible to think about that they came from basically nothing. A bare-bones skeleton crew, funded entirely by Richard Tice, to this. It can't be understated just how incredible that is, just on the face of it. Just forget policy. That takes incredible skill, management, and perseverance. So well done.
Why do you think there are less people here, and why do you think people have gone home?
Boring speakers.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing. Mel Stride's great. He's clearly on top of things.
I mean, the speakers were boring. I don't know. Jenrick's was good. Kemi's last one was actually good. As I say, it's beyond that. People just don't care. They feel abandoned by the party too much for too long, and now they're losing everywhere, and they know they deserve it. And I'm not being funny, but being on the doorstep as a Tory cannot be fun. I mean, I doorstep, obviously, as a Reform activist, and it's either people who don't care, that's the majority, obviously, people who are really, really happy to see that there's a Reform alternative there and they get excited to vote, or it's people who basically tell me to grow up and then they're surprised when I tell them that I'm nearly 30. And I've mentioned the stories of people who've been intimidated in the streets and things like that, given verbal abuse. That's kind of normal. But when it comes to the Tories, you don't have anyone that's excited to vote for them. It's apathy. It's what kills a political party. It's genuinely worse than people hating you, because if people hate you, that usually means you're actually doing something and have an ideal to aim for, which the Tories actually did have for the past 14 years, about half the time maybe. This time round, what is there? Just copy Reform? Oh, okay, I'll vote for Reform then.
But I mean, to be honest, the conference hall, the main stage is always pretty dead. It's not exactly like a nice place to go and sit in. It's stuffy, it's warm. Plenty of reasons for that, but...
Yeah, but the other issue you have is that the conference hall is also smaller. Like, the amount of chairs out for people is way less than it has been in previous years. There's nobody that said it was busy. The only areas that were busy were fringe events, and that's because they were put in alcoves that could fit about 50 people. I don't think there's been any official numbers of how many people were there, but I'd guess between 3,000 and 5,000, which, pales in comparison to previous years, obviously. And again, how many people there were actually there off their own back and not paid to be there, or not there because they were activists and basically felt like they needed to be there? Probably not many people. But hey, at least everyone had fun at the after party. As I say, the whole thing's just relegated to a social club.
You look at the Conservative front bench and you don't really think, God, that's a talented bunch, or wow, what a speaker, I don't want to miss him or her. I think that's the main reason. That's the main reason why I haven't gone to many of them, because I think it's not exactly what I want to be spending an hour doing, sat there.
Yeah, you want to go out and socialise, I totally get it. You'll have friends in there, but I mean, yeah, just comparing it to the Reform one, I listened to most of the main stage speeches, and they were good speeches, and it got you obviously quite enthused about being in Reform, joining Reform, and being an activist for them. Bar the madman they decided to get on stage to talk about the King and Queen having cancer after COVID injections, but well, we'll ignore that. Hopefully Reform have learned their lesson from that one.
Especially when, if you're talking about policies now, it's never going to happen. So it's a bit of it's a hiding to nothing.
Oh, I totally agree with that. That's the other funny thing about this whole stamp duty thing. Everyone went nuts about it, and I just think, well, you know, we're actually going to get a better policy from Reform anyway, so, you know, well done for the standing ovation, but, you know, imagine going on a doorstep and saying to a young person who's renting out a flat, who never in their wildest dreams thinks that they're going to afford a house in the next 5 years, oh, we're going to abolish stamp duty. The first thing I've got to say is, what's stamp duty? It's not exactly something to rile up people, other than people who frankly plan to move to London.
Well, to be fair, from what I've seen, the seats haven't been too bad. I saw pictures online, but I think that's just people spinning it. It's like they'll take pictures of 8 a.m. conference meetings. Most people aren't in for that.
No, sorry. There were plenty of Mel Stride's speech where it was about, I don't know, a third to a half full. Yeah, okay, for the two popular people, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, yeah, full conference hall. But again, this is also missing the point that it was a smaller conference hall. And there was a funny thing that everyone kept saying. You could see a lot of blue carpets, which you didn't usually see in past years. The inference being there aren't many people covering the camera angles from the top down, obviously, where you could see past people to the blue carpet. It was just a sea of blue. Sorry, but you can't have, as well, everyone in this Vox Pop saying, yes, it has been a lot more empty, and then trying to defend that. It's fine to admit that the Tories are in a bad place. Everyone knows it. This is just cope.
So it's going to look a bit empty. But when the first speech that Badenoch had, full room, most of the conferences I've been in, it's been packed with people queuing outside.
That's quite a funny one, because listening to the Daily Telegraph podcast again, they were saying, oh, usually there's a massive queue to get into the leader's speech at the end, but there wasn't one this time, so don't know about that one.
Is there a future for the Tory party?
Possibly. I mean, there is a possibility of a party to the right, which is a little bit more serious than what Reform are offering. I don't want to sound like I'm being like some, party pooper or anything, but
Well, while you struggle to formulate that thought, let's just bear in mind the Tories are basically carbon copying Reform, so it's, again, a really stupid thing to say.
Looking at Reform, say what you will about Roger, but I think he's wholly serious about what he believes and what he wants to do, compared to a lot of the people behind who I don't think are, especially when a lot of the Boris hanger-ons, who are probably one of the big reasons we're in this mess, have gone and flocked over there,
well, hang on a second, the Boris hangers-on, which isn't actually me, I joined after Liz Truss left, but the people who wanted Boris basically wanted what Reform are offering, so no wonder they've gone over there. And another thing, the Boris hangers-on absolutely hate Boris now because he betrayed them. So, let's not pretend that what the Boris supporters wanted caused this mess, because what the Boris supporters wanted, they didn't get whatsoever, hence they've gone over to a party offering it.
Biggest example, they complain about the Online Safety Act in Congress. Literally the next day, here's the architect of the Online Safety Act, Nadine Dorries, willing to join.
Yeah, I mean, basically no one's happy about Nadine Dorries joining, but to be honest, I completely forgot she did join at this point, so clearly it's not that bad. But yeah, people voted Boris Johnson to not have those sorts of things in, and then he was putting those sorts of things in. That's why people have left the Tory party. Well done. I don't understand why you're not putting two and two together there.
And, she was pretty happy to defend this act even as recent as 2021 when acquaintance of mine, Jack Hadfield, actually, asked her, isn't this going to be used as a tool for censorship? Which she said, oh yeah, but it's for misinformation. Now she's doing a UE on there.
Yeah, good. I'm glad she's done a U-turn on that. It was a stupid policy, and now she doesn't defend it. Well, to be fair, she kind of does. She says, oh, it's Labour's changes that were bad. No, Nadine, it was bad from the start, but I'll take the U-turn.
and also it means we can have a party hopefully not too, tied to America, because they seem to be doing whatever the Americans are doing, like the Britannia card or the, what to tell criminals to El Salvador, that sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe getting inspired by good policy over in America is actually a good thing. I don't want to end up just being, I don't want to do that because X, Y, or Z country is doing it, including China, by the way. China do some good stuff, but that doesn't make me an apologist for the CCP, does it?
And they're scared to sort of deviate, like when he's, Trump said about Tylenol causing autism or something. Like, the fact they couldn't say, well, no, that's not necessarily true. I don't think it is true. Like, they couldn't say no to that. Well, it's like, you can say no to these things.
I mean, Dr. David Bull was in that very same interview saying it's not true. So, again, everyone just... I know it's a problem with reform that they can't exactly annoy Trump. I do understand that's a problem. But there is always it's always going to happen. They always miss what's actually... like, the substance of what's said, and they just focus on... Farage is asked, do you think Donald Trump's wrong? And he obviously doesn't want to say yes, even though most of the rest of that interview was him diplomatically calling Trump an idiot.
Yeah, of course. It's the longest standing political party in the world. It's always going to have a future. It's not just going to fade out.
It'll be like the Lib Dems, won't it? I mean, let's be real. You're already seeing a split from it. It's called Reform. Why do you think a lot of ex-Tories are going to it? Tory Party 2.0. Yes, but... aside from Nadine Dorries, obviously, it's people who believe in the project, and very much the project is pretty much, it's a grassroots mixed with a top-down, where both of them have the same idea of Tories basically need to die, plus let's actually get the country to where we wanted it. What was the point of voting Boris Johnson? Basically to deliver what Reform are promising. And that very much seems to be what an awful lot of people who are joining the Reform Party from the Tories are on board with too. Even the questionable ones like Nadine Dorries and Sir Jake Berry. But then that's kind of all rug pulled when you see Danny Kruger's actually been given a proper position in getting ready for government. And he was, it's been described as 9/11 for the Tories, and it was. And they're all trying to cope and see that, it's a nothing. No, that's a pretty big one. I mean, you'd expect more MPs to follow suit, and they haven't yet, but... I get the feeling that Reform are going to drip feed it like they drip fed the 20 councillors who came over to Reform's second day of the conference.
I think right now it is at a low point, but it's got enough experience to bounce back, and if it needs to change, it will.
Yeah, but your experience is drip feeding over to Reform, that's the problem. Again, Danny Kruger moved over. Not good for you. It's not out of the question that Lord Frost moves over. Hell, from a bit of insider knowledge that I have, apparently 18 Tory MPs have been rejected. Now, to me, that only one MP has actually moved over so far. So from what I can tell, I think they have a few in the chamber, effectively to fire off whenever they need a big news story. It's always said, Reform are only good because they're online. No, they're very, very good at the classic political game too. It's why they're basically dominating everything. It's really good to see.
There will always be, at the heart of the British population, a conservative lean, I think. I mean, the idea that the Conservative Party's dead and they're never going to have any seats and they lose every MP is palpably ludicrous.
Oh yeah, as I say, it's hyperbole. And I do agree, we are naturally a right-wing country. I completely agree with that. The problem is that the left wing over the past 100 years have managed to find a really good way to subvert the whole thing, and well, this is why Reform appear to be needed. And hell, Thatcher was needed at her time too, ostensibly right-wing. And amazingly, so good it kept them in power for 17 years. Same thing could happen with Reform. I don't want to go ahead and say it's definitely going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, to get back to the point of the Tory party dying, it's comparative. They had a landslide majority in 2019, and 10 years later they're on 20 seats, 30 to 70 on current polling. I don't know how you can describe that as anything other than a dead party. I wouldn't be shocked if the same thing was being used to describe the Liberals back when they collapsed after World War One. And they kept splitting until you end up with the Lib Dems as being the biggest faction, and well, now they're on 70 seats. It'll be a regional party, much like the Lib Dems, and they will effectively fight in the Shires against the Lib Dems. That is the future of that party. It's basically just going to be a mildly more right-wing party for people in the Shires to fight over those certain seats and maybe a couple of areas in Scotland, who knows. I doubt the Scotland one, actually. And comparatively to what they were, a proper force that, well, was in power for 70% of the past century, comparatively, yeah, dead.
whether the Conservative Party has to kind of redefine itself. Going from Boris, where you were certainly selling an idea of Conservative with a small c on the social aspect, but economically kind of slightly more to the left, which is sort of what Reform's offering.
I mean, was he selling that? I don't really remember him being against, say, LGBT special interest groups. Hell, the LGBT cons grew under Boris Johnson. In fact, they grew so much they're basically the only youth wing that exists anymore. He liberalised absolutely everything in terms of, well, social issues, and, well, I mean, yeah, we ended up with the biggest tax and spend regime since the war. It's not slightly left, we're on the road to serfdom. Basically have socialism. It's just really, really, really ineffective socialism, and a Reform offering that? Well, not sure on that one. There's an awful lot of tax cuts that they were putting in their last contract, which they're basically, from all the policy I've seen so far, they seem to be taking the manifesto and ostensibly moving right on everything, which is really good to see. And I mean, the stupid thing to say here is, oh, they're basically offering what Boris was offering. The problem with Boris wasn't that he was offering that, he won a landslide. The problem with Boris is that he promised all this stuff, and then we ended up with the worst government ever. Probably wasn't the worst ever, but it was the worst in my lifetime. Well, I don't know, Brown was pretty bad. The worst since the Tories got back into power.
Whether the Conservative Party in the future moves towards being something that's more like the home counties, the seats they lost to the Lib Dems, the kind of more affluent, liberal in a kind of classical sense, but therefore has to accept of never particularly being bigger than 150 seats, I would say that's possibly where the future's going to be.
Oh yeah, totally agree. They might even merge.
I was at an event the other day, a spectator event, that said the Conservative Party, and I do agree with this, is not going to start to come back truly until it, faces up to where it did go wrong, where it did let people down, and I will acknowledge we let people down with some. Quite spectacularly with people like Liz Truss.
Oh, no. The problems stem way behind Liz Truss. There's a reason that the members voted for her. And the funny thing is that generally when it comes to polling, nobody even remembers who Liz Truss is, which, oddly enough, after she was kicked out, is what I thought would happen. It's like, who's going to remember a Prime Minister that was in the seat of number 10 for 49 days? No one, as it turns out. Wow, I was right. And instead, people only really remember that everything costs more, there's less social cohesion than there was, and crime skyrocketed. These seem to be the big problems, along with immigration, of course, which kind of feeds into all three. So trying to bat it all off to Liz Truss especially is wrong. No, the problem was Boris Johnson. The problem was absolutely Boris Johnson. And already trying to deflect to Liz Truss of all people is just silly. Nobody knows who she is. There's a reason that at this point she's only really going on alternative media podcasts and going to people who run them's weddings as well. She's a pariah, and a very disappointing one at that.
I acknowledge this does sound like I'm being incredibly pessimistic and hating on the Conservative Party, but
No, it's okay. Most people do. Don't worry about it.
I also don't want to appear out of touch.
Well, appear out of touch? I just don't think you want to be out of touch whatsoever. The problem with the Tories is that they were very out of touch. They do great campaigns, do all these focus groups, what can we sell? And then when they were in government, they do the opposite. And I think even the Labour Party threw out a tweet effectively saying, oh, Labour are delivering a whole load of things. Here's 40 out of 52 promises that we're in the progress of delivering. And then they had a statistic for the last Tory government, Boris Johnson's, and they ended up delivering 2 out of 48 or something like that. Yeah, that might be where your problem is.
There's clearly a lot of energy from young people in wanting to see this party succeed, and obviously I'm an elected councillor where I live, and there's a lot of young people who are trying to get involved, a lot of young people trying to get... Sorry, I've just seen someone else I know. So I think there's a real energy from a lot of young people, and so yeah, I want to make sure that that's continued, and I want to work hard to make sure that we maybe win the next election, but we'll do what we can to go forward.
This guy's either already a spad or is aiming to be a spad. That's the only reason anyone would say that. I'm not even joking. The young people within the Tory party are very much only there being massive activists because it's basically going to end up being a job for life. The problem is that when your party's currently dying, the prospects, well, where are they? Or they're certainly not there. So with that gone, and with these people being rather inexperienced in absolutely every other aspect of life, they're going to be panicking. And so this is basically just the denial stage of grief. Anyway, they're also directly asked about reform in another Vox Pop, so let's go into that.
Let me just gather my thoughts. So reform, I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of them at all. Nigel Farage, I think he's an absolute grifter. I don't think he has any serious policies.
It's always funny when Labour or the Tories say this, because they always end up copying their policies anyway. And then he follows up, they have no policies with this.
I do actually agree with the evaluations that he's a socialist.
How's he a socialist if he's got no policies? What are you talking about? It's just random insults. As I say, this guy's aiming to be a spad.
I think they're big spend, low tax. It doesn't work. You cannot get deficits to GDP down if you're spending more than you're. It's completely ridiculous, and so I don't really take them very seriously as a party.
Absolutely, and I mean this. Absolutely, every single one of those complaints could be applied to the Tories, and yet he's defending them as if they're some. Well, basically, as if they're still Thatcherite. It was so funny. At the event, they had, a Maggie mosaic where people had the picture taken of them to make a Maggie Thatcher picture of a kind of collage of it. You know what I mean. But they, for some reason, had their suits in the glass sarcophaguses. Listen, I'm a Maggie Thatcher fan. I think I would actually leave the conference if I saw that as right, this is a bit too cultist for me. I like her, she was a good politician, but we should not be hero-worshipping her. That's very strange.
I think in the next couple of years, the British electorate, I think they'll figure it out. They'll figure out the game that they're just promising whatever they can to try and get some up in the polls. But I think once in a couple of years, when people actually really have to think about who we're going to elect for the serious job of governing the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world, they'll realise reform's just a joke.
Again, this is post Danny Kruger moving over. There's definitely going to be more MPs in the chamber who are going to be launched over. And honestly, I would genuinely not be shocked if it is someone that this guy wants to be a spad to, and then you'll see him in another random Vox Pop and I'll be like, yeah, reform's great, free market, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it could happen. It could easily happen.
Look, I see through Nigel Farage, and my mother would never forgive me if I joined Reform and I joined Nigel Farage.
Oh yeah, that's another big reason people aren't joining Reform, especially if they're Remainers, or arch-Remainers I should say. It's because Nigel Farage is the devil to some people, which indicates to me that on some level he's doing the right things.
You see through Nigel Farage, what do you mean?
I think I understand why people I think it's important to acknowledge why Nigel Farage does well, and you can't deny he's an astute political operator. He's a brilliant political operator.
Just say you don't like him. That's all you have to say. I also enjoyed the fact that the main reason he didn't join Reform was because his mum would disown him. He's clearly just trying to toe a Tory line, but clearly struggles to lie.
He's managed to get results for the causes that are important to him. He's instrumental in bringing about Brexit. He manages to make these things almost mainstream, which previously were, outside views, and get massive support bases for them. But I think he's ultimately cynical. I think I don't think he's got the character that I expect of a Conservative politician.
Well, lucky for you, he's not a Conservative politician, but this is what it comes down to. He's great. He got us an awful lot of things that I wanted. I just kind of don't like him. The vibes are off, my man. Okay, well, they're very much on for the rest of the country, so, how do you deal with that? I see through him more means, he's clearly, a grifter, he's a man who's actually a socialist, pretending to be a capitalist, blah, blah, blah. These are usually the arguments here, but this guy's literally just saying, I do like him, I just can't bring myself to say it, but I can't also lie about it.
He is the best communicator in the UK. The best, from a track record alone, he has the best history of any politician, probably since Tony Blair, if not Margaret Thatcher.
Oh yes, I would absolutely agree. And this is why an awful lot of them are panicking. I'm sure a lot of them are cursing themselves that the leadership back in 2016 and beyond didn't offer him a peerage. It would have neutered all energy further right, but no, they had to make him the enemy. And well, now he's acting like it, isn't he?
For changing the course of this country without even having to really be any position of power. Being an MP for Clacton or being a European Parliament member he led the country to leave the EU, has consistently started parties that have done incredibly well. There is no way around it. He's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, this is part of the reason the Tories are absolutely panicking and scared of reform. They know that they are headed up by someone who is just leaps and bounds ahead of being competent in the political sphere than anyone they have in the Tory party. Their best offer, Robert Jenrick. Great. Even people who liked Robert Jenrick and Katie Lamb seem to be starting to understand that they're just not the ones to save the party. There's too much baggage alone. I'm also not entirely impressed with the way that they do go about their political activities. I don't think they're great orators. Robert Jenrick has a bit of too much of a nerdy vibe, and I don't think it's getting too many people on board. And frankly, I think Katie Lamb's a bit fake, but I think that's because of her background in acting and show writing, where everyone's a little bit fake, so maybe that's what's rubbing off on it.
They make headlines, but they don't actually think about policy, which is dangerous. I don't think Reform are a party that can be in government, because I don't think they're stable enough. You need a bit of stability if you're going to be in government. You need a bit of experience, which of course we have, but
well, yeah, that's part of the reason to get Danny Kruger on board. And it just always gets me when people try and use this argument. Oh, you need experience in government so you know how to use the levers of power. Sorry, but we've seen for 14 years that having experience in government means that we have the worst outcomes known to man. I'm being way too hyperbolic on that, but certainly your promises get completely and utterly rug pulled. And it was quite clear to see that what the civil service want, they get, and we're seeing this in the Labour government too. Now, obviously, the argument that you have no experience is, oh, well, they'll run rings around you. Okay, having experience, they ran rings around you, so kind of a pointless argument.
I think if reforms were to get in, it'd be a very dangerous period for however long it would last.
Okay, need a bit of explanation on that.
Do you think they are dangerous for politics?
Of course. Obviously, if people have their opinions, it's right to voice them. And if that doesn't line up with the current parties, you go to a different one. But I think some of their opinions are, like I said, headlines over actual political ideas.
Oh, we can't deport that many people. Simple as that. You can't put people in jail for crimes. You can't deport foreign criminals. It's just headlines. They've got no plan, apart from, obviously, the detailed policy they keep putting out along with these headlines, but there you go.
There's a lot of things to like, but there's a lot of things to not like. It has the opposite problem, I think, that UKIP did 10 years ago, which I was formerly a member of UKIP.
I mean, to be fair, so was I, but why did you move to the Tories from UKIP? What? I moved to them after Liz Truss to basically add to the membership that wanted Liz Truss back, though I know a load of people that just don't give them money anymore because of that, and really I should have saved mine. But the difference between UKIP and Reform is effectively professionalism. They are still, relatively Thatcherite, with a decent understanding that you need excellent industrial policy in the modern world. Again, why have you moved from UKIP to Tories and decided to stay there after Johnson? I don't get that. Especially now, it doesn't make sense while they're dying.
Where that had a lot of talent in it, where they had lives beyond the party. Alan Sked, the historian who was there before and after, the late great Patrick O'Flynn, one of the great Westminster correspondents, someone like Peter Whittle, who's done a great job with the New Culture Forum, and a bunch of other people become columnists. You can't say that for Reform. I'm not being funny. If Andrea Jenkins, Richard Tice, and again Nadine Dorris are the answer, what's the question?
Richard Tice is great. I will hear no disrespect to Richard Tice. I also like Andrea Jenkins. As mentioned before, Nadine Dorris, yeah, question mark over that one, sure. It doesn't say Danny Kruger though. Like everyone else has said, he was part of UKIP. Why would you be part of UKIP if you don't like Nigel Farage? What are you talking about? Zia Youssef's another one he's skipped over. What about these bad politicians? Sorry, do you understand the laundry list of terrible politicians you have in the Tory party? The funniest part of this as well is that the current front bench is clearly trying to emulate Farage and Reform, and then every other ex-Tory MP, minister as well actually, Amber Rudd for example, Edwina Curry, they're coming out against Jenrick saying he's horrible. Do you not understand how bad this looks from the outsider's perspective? It just looks like there's a load of infighting in the Tories. I mean, it's very odd. It's very odd actually, all of this, because it actually seems like a lot of wets, despite the fact that they got their answer with Kemi Badenoch, left the party. A lot of these people aren't exactly the types I would expect to vote cleverly. Yet, also, a guy I didn't expect to vote cleverly said he would have voted him. It's all very confusing. I don't know what their theory of mind is when it comes to their ideal political situation. I couldn't tell you. I just can't get over I was in UKIP, but now I hate Farage. what? Jared Batten was the problem and what killed UKIP. It wasn't Farage. Farage was the thing keeping it going.
Singing on stage. I mean, Spinal Tap 2 wasn't out for a couple of weeks yet, was it?
Not a bad joke, to be fair.
Why would you label them as a joke?
Because I think that they take the British people as a joke. That's my issue, is that, they could be a serious party. They could actually stand up for what they say they believe in.
Has everyone just missed the last 2 months? They've had plenty of policy drip-fed over the past 2 months. Crime, immigration, Danny Kruger coming over to help them prepare for government. They're just not a serious party. One thing I really do not like about Tory attitude at the moment is this whole idea of, Reform's just not a serious party. While they're currently collapsing into a 20-seat average vote share, and let's face it, their actual competition is going to be the Lib Dems.
But they don't back that up with policy, or they back it up with his words and rhetoric that I would say is quite harmful, actually. So I call them a joke because I think they treat the British people as a joke.
It's so confusing when doing Tory Vox Pops. When Reform have this rhetoric of immigrants bad and all that, it's all very harmful. But I'll defend Jemrick talking about not seeing whiteface and all that, which, by the way, I defended too. But even though I'm a Reform activist, I'll be honest when someone like Jemrick does something good like that, even though I don't particularly trust him.
I think when Farage goes on LBC and he's been very wishy-washy and not willing to call out that Donald Trump saying paracetamol gives you autism is complete BS.
Well, I mean, again, you had Dr. David Bull on the same interview saying there's no link between taking paracetamol when you're pregnant and autism. And, he's actually a medical doctor, so I guess he knows what he's talking about. But that's ignored because everyone's trying to smear Farage, and, well, there's some subjects where he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't, because, as I say, there's a bit of a problem that they can't really call Trump an idiot in any way other than very diplomatically.
You've got to be willing to offend Donald Trump sometimes, because otherwise you're going to find yourself going down ludicrous rabbit holes.
Well, you say this, but the Labour Party have decided their strategy is to actually charm the pants off him. So actually, no, it's understandable to not want to insult Trump, but, well, the problem with Farage is that he's constantly asked about these things, because obviously they're friends, and they do base a fair amount of their plans off what Trump too is doing.
Farage is so willing not to kind of offend these people he considers his pals in America. It's not very patriotic.
Sorry, he has to insult Donald Trump, otherwise he's not patriotic. I mean, I agree the Labour Party aren't patriotic, but I would never cite they don't insult Donald Trump as a reason for that. Again, you're talking about someone who very likely is going to be the Prime Minister in 5 years. It just kind of makes sense not to offend the people over in America who are likely to be in power in the next 5 years. And realistically, who in the Tories talked about Tylenol? Who insulted Trump? No one. I get it, it's an easy attack on Farage, but let's be realistic. Nobody's actually attacked Trump on the Tylenol thing in politics in Britain. So nobody's patriotic according to this guy.
And should Farage be leader of Conservatives?
No. No. Definitely not, no. You think of his career, he's gone so far right-wing. I don't think that's what we need. Well, to be fair, left-wing now, but...
I love it. How can I insult him? Again, what is Farage's main policy concerns at the moment? What's he actually announced? Absolutely decimate criminals. Get rid of immigrants that shouldn't be here. Massive pro-family, 2-child benefit cap. If both parents are British nationals and working, by the way. It's a stipulation that absolutely nobody points out, and Reform should be better on our comms on that, absolutely. But it's just so funny. Everyone can see that the Tories' plan here is basically copy Reform's homework, but every Tory's like, oh no, don't put Farage in, because basically we can't admit we're wrong and we hate him. That's it. That's the only reason.
I don't think that's what we need as a party. We need someone like Kemi. Kemi's going to work for us. I don't think we need to change that. And I definitely wouldn't be Farage if it was.
Yeah, well, we've just had a load of by-elections and Tories keep losing. They keep losing an awful lot of the vote share, whereas Reforms are really putting them up. Again, at the moment, there is no one more deluded than Tory loyalists at this point. It's just a fact. Because realistically here, the choice for any sort of saviour of the Tory party is, well, hope that Kemi's improvements continue and actually do improve things, because at the moment they aren't, or regicide and put Robert Jenrick in. Problem is with Robert Jenrick in, whenever there's any sort of debate about him, oh, well, he oversaw the Boris wave that we're getting rid of over in Reform, so why would you call the arsonist who caused the fire to put it out? Doesn't make sense. Which is why I think they're going to be relegated to a minor party forever from now on. But I could be surprised.
No, absolutely no chance. He spent the entirety of last year, 2023, even 2022, saying, I want to destroy the Conservative Party. Why would we want him back?
Sometimes it's better to keep your enemies closer than your friends, that's why. Also, if he was just in the Conservative Party and at the top of it, yeah, it would be very difficult to actually destroy them at that point. Because let's face it, at that point it would basically just be Reform anyway. But yeah, it's a completely unrealistic scenario, and I'm just giving you some reasons as to why it would be a good idea. But it's the same reason why, the homosexual types, the Zoomerwoff and Harrison Pitt asked the other day of Michael Gove, why not put someone like Lowe in charge? You know, he's an outsider. And Lowe, in a very diplomatic way, called him an idiot. Because one, he really liked Kemi for some reason, and two, Rupert Lowe has been acting against the Tory party for years, despite the fact he's got plenty of friends in there. Why would they put an actor who has been trying to undermine them for over a decade into leadership position? Defecting over to the Tories, I think, is already very, very unlikely. But making him leader is just madness.
I mean, electorally, he would probably lead the Conservatives to a victory, more so than anybody else. Do his policies particularly align with conservatism? I don't know. They're kind of turning the taps on spending-wise is sort of what Boris promised, and that's something that I personally don't believe is a conservative value.
Another absolutely ridiculous reason that I absolutely despise Tories that say this is, we all agree, I on this channel agree, that the winter fuel payments that are given to pensioners is ridiculous and should not be happening. And it's one thing I don't particularly like about Reform, but I can understand electorally why they do it. But the Tories were celebrating when they U-turned on it. That is a big spending tap, and the Tories were in favour of keeping it on. So, again, it's pretty ridiculous to try and call Nigel Farage socialist while you are doing that in the Tory party. It's absolutely mental.
So I would say no on policy grounds. A lot of people just say no because he's a racist, but I don't think he should be tarred with that just because of some...
Well, you're probably a Jenrick fan who, let's face it, has now made immigration his number one priority. And yeah, when it comes to policy, a lot of Tories, if they were honest, would say they quite like the general direction of Reform, but they can't be honest about that because the whole party line is you have to hate Reform because they're destroying us, which is true. So I can understand why they don't like them. But this guy's certainly the most honest out of all the Tories they're talking to today.
He is dangerous, though.
I wouldn't say he's dangerous, no. The idea that somebody leading a party is somehow wanting to instill some undemocratic I don't buy that at all. I don't think there's anything in his record or his policies that indicates that. I wouldn't say dangerous at all.
Yeah, honest guy. I mean, the politics show is very much a leftist outlet, and so they think anything to the right of Mao is fascism and therefore dangerous. This guy, as I say, is the most honest out of everyone we've heard about today, and on top of that probably would be a nice fit in Reform, but, we'll leave him to make that decision in time.
What are the big issues that Reform are getting right?
Immigration, for the most part, except for their Britannia card thing, which, again, is just going to allow more, non-dom sort of things, which... sounds like a bit of shady or whatever, but again, it's what the Americans are doing foolishly as well.
Literally, all it will be doing is putting the non-dom tax back to what it was before 19. I can't remember when the changes were made by the Tories. Except this time round, the fee is paid up front. I mean, let's be honest, it's just a way for the higher-ups in the party to have dinners with their foreign friends. That is largely what it's about. However, there's absolutely no doubt that it will bring back an awful lot of people who left the country because of taxes, on the very wealthy, I should add. And also it incentivises them to invest in Britain as well. So whatever primary reason they have for it, it's not like there's secondary and tertiary reasons that actually it's a good policy to vote for. And as I say, all it really does is put the non-dom status back to what it was historically anyway, which was fine for 3 centuries, for goodness sake. Oh, it does something to non-doms, that's all I know. Yeah, you don't understand the policy, and, It's these type of people saying, oh, Reform have no policy or detailed policy. There is detail with that policy. It's not fully thought out. There's problems with it. But it wasn't just a headline grabber. That's the point. Also, you'd agree with it if it was Tory policy.
And a lot of stuff they say, which is nice, like, if they do come in to repeal, like, euthanasia and very late-stage abortion. And again, I'm not saying one could be for or against abortion, that's fine, but, like, even the sort of stages that they're advocating, like the government that's currently passed, I don't think it's wholly popular even among people who support that sort of legislation, so...
That was a whole bunch of waffle, but what he's trying to say is effectively Reform are getting the social conservatism right. That's what he said there.
That's something interesting. Whether they'll have the follow-through is another matter, and my attitude is like, beyond Farage, I'm not sure if they have anything strongly in common. I don't mean to keep poo-pooing on them. I mean, my party's got a lot of work to do, for goodness sake.
Yeah, you lost the talented Danny Kruger to, of all people, Zia Youssef. So clearly he prefers to work under Zia Youssef than work with Robert Jenrick, which, I don't blame him for.
But, they're meant to be alternative and better, I would assume, because they're meant to be alternative.
Well, a lot of people seem to agree, hence they keep voting for them. Again, by-elections from yesterday, pretty much universally, Reform got more votes. Universally for the Tories, they got less. So, yeah, keep coping.
These are people who have no experience of government. And I mean, we all start. We're all elected for the first time.
It's very funny whenever they come out with this, because every time a Tory says this, they have to stipulate it with an awful lot of jargon and caveats. It's like, I suppose that I was inexperienced once, but as a party, they are inexperienced. But then it's always the point of, okay, you were experienced for 14 years and you still couldn't beat the civil service, so what's your excuse?
The established parties have kind of, an infrastructure within the party and a history of governing in local government and in Westminster.
Yeah, and that is not good enough for people to still vote for you. In fact, it's a big reason people are going against. Oh, look what experience gets you. Nowhere good.
That startup parties like Reform don't have. So, people are really, I would say, taking a risk in voting for Reform.
Yeah, people know that. People absolutely know that. There's no way around it. Experience isn't good enough for people. They've seen where experience gets people. Hell, Labour, they had no experience whatsoever. People still voted for them. How many ministers that we have at the moment that have been ministers in the past? I think it's like Yvette Cooper, and the book stops there. And how well did she do? Well, she did so well as Home Secretary, she was kicked out just after a year. Sorry, these arguments just don't fly. I've heard absolutely nothing that convinces me against Reform or makes me reflect on them, and I'm serious about that. The only arguments that the Tories here really have against Reform are, I just really don't like them, and they're stealing the thunder that should be ours. Believe it or not, the Tories are still in the mindset of, we deserve to govern because we are the natural party of government. Well, guess what? You rest on your laurels, you offended absolutely everyone with how badly you ran the country, and now you get what you deserve. Unlucky.
But people don't, people don't care. They're not bothered about that. And if they're leading councils now, it remains to be seen how successful they'll be.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of pressure on Reform for actually delivering. The funniest tweets I see are of things about Kent recently, where they are probably going to have to increase council tax. It's like, oh, look, Reform will make a promise and they can't keep it. It is worth mentioning they never promised to lower council tax, and they never promised that they wouldn't raise them. They simply said they would find savings, and they have done. The reason they don't have any option other than to raise council tax is, well, entirely to do with the fact that they have to spend an absolute bomb on social care. It's pretty much entirely social care, which is it's obviously stupid to have councils effectively be the administrators of that, because it means that what you're voting for, well, as it turns out, you can't really vote for an awful lot when it comes to local level. So that's something that needs to change at the national government level, which is going to be the argument over the next few years. I think it's going to be the Welsh Senedd and the Scottish Parliament that's going to be the interesting elections, because that is actually going to be the first time that Reform are in charge of things like the NHS. And don't get me wrong, yes, it is big risk, and it could all come crashing down, but, well, trust the plan. Right, with that was everything I had for you for today, so please do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. You can also become a channel member, and also leave super chats and super thanks if you so wish too. In terms of shilling, next Tuesday it's Tosh Talks, next Wednesday it's the gaming stream, next Saturday it is Laughing at the Guardian with some whamming. Wolves of Westminster out later. Right, with that, that's everything I had for you for today, so once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.